Meeting called to order. First order of business, well, we do have a quorum. Lauren is not here. She said it was possible she was gonna call in, but wasn't clear her schedule, so it looks like.
And
the
we're
four
late.
of us. What?
And we're late.
And we're late, so perhaps she did, who knows? Anyway, I didn't see her, but she should be back for the next meeting. Anyway, first order of business is accept the minutes of the March 3rd regular meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Melissa, second by Shay. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh, we gotta do a roll call, sorry. Shay?
Do we, because she's not
She's
here.
not on.
She's not here.
No. Oh, yeah, no need for a roll call. There's nobody on. Thank you for the correction. We got, it's approved then.
Good fun.
Yeah, minutes are approved. Just
your look.
Yes, good idea. Let's continue. Okay. Visitor comments and petitions. We do have two holdovers. Visitors, do you have any comments or petitions?
No, thank you very much.
Okay, appreciate you staying.
Thank you.
But aren't you on the agenda? Are you
Yes.
approval of the Lighthouse Restoration Committee? So do you want to take them?
Do you, yeah.
So they could go.
Entertain a motion to go out of order.
So moved.
Moved by Phil, second by Melissa. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we're out of order. Here we are. Approval of the Lighthouse Restoration Committee, new logo and website. I saw this go by my email. Do you have it?
Sure, you should have it.
Here it is. So what can you tell us about this and what are you looking for exactly from the select board?
We felt that it should be approved by the select board and the posting, public posting. I don't know if you approved the library.
We did not specifically approve the library website. I do not believe.
That was through the Friends of the Library.
Okay, so there are no friends of the lighthouse right now, so.
It's the second table.
Thank God.
So this is the reason we wanted to have your approval. If it's not necessary, we can go to the next item.
Perhaps after the paint job, there will be friends.
I like this. I think it looks really nice.
I'd entertain a motion to go ahead and approve it.
So moved.
Moved by Shay,
Second.
second by Bill and Melissa, all in favor?
I,
It is approved. Great. Thank
And
you.
then there's the website.
That's on that.
Yes, the website,
Yeah, I know.
that's information that Catherine, Mary provided, and she'll be updating it, and so that'll be put on the World Wide Web.
So it's on a separate, it's not
So
on the
that's,
town.
yeah, that's not
website.
on the town's website.
That's right,
That's
that's right.
independent, so.
Yeah,
That's
so are we, is that a good thing for us to do?
What?
There would be a link to the town? I mean, what control do you have over a website that's not on the town's? And I'm just not, this is just the first committee that's,
What control do we have if anybody wants to put up a website anywhere in the world?
I think pesticide, don't they have their own?
Yes,
they do, yeah.
That's not on the town website.
I mean,
Is there a
like, I
link?
don't know what kind of control we gain if we put it on the town's website. If someone were to decide that they wanted to make some disparaging website about the Grinnell Point Lighthouse, what would we do about it? I mean, freedom of speech, not much, probably. So I trust that Dave is going to be a good steward of this website. I personally don't need more than that.
It's just a format, I wanted your approval before I did that.
Yeah, I think it's great.
and then what if they want to go on and I don't think that was brought up here. I don't know if I had that in time, but you were talking about a donate
The
button.
donate icon at the bottom and to be linked to an account at the town. And I was under the impression that the town was a 501c, but it's a 701.
Different type of.
Yes, and so I'd like to put a donate icon at the bottom so that those donations can go to the town and be used by the lighthouse. Maybe that's the real question I
That-
have.
I feel a little concerned
Yeah.
about an outside entity having
Yeah.
the bank information linked to the town's account. I don't know what to think about that, other than, did you run any of this by Sally? and
I-
everybody else?
I'm going to, because I
Okay.
wanted to hear.
Yeah, so it's just
I mean,
on all these website restoration websites, they have a little donate button, and that's linked to some organization. There are no friends, and the only friends we have are the town right now. So,
And you're welcome. Dave,
Stuck by you.
jeez, you don't give us much credit.
Turning hostile?
I've had my pizza, I'm going.
Have some chocolate on the way out.
But
I ate it
I'm
all.
just trying to make everything so there are no surprises.
Surprise.
Melissa,
In other words, you haven't asked what color you wanted the White House painted yet.
that's the whole, I
So,
think as a,
but seriously, I'd just like to have a link so that people can, donate.
as a general.
I think we need to wait for Sally's
Yep, that's fine.
decision on that before we move forward.
That's great.
I think it's a general matter of like having a website with a donate button, that's pretty commonplace now. And I think it makes a lot of sense for something like, a lot of that, like this project, but I think getting the town's attorney thoughts on, whether we could or should, and how to structure that, I think is an important piece. But I think generally speaking, it sounds like it's, something that happens all the time.
Okay, well, thank you.
Other thoughts on that? Melissa?
Something that might help you, one of the things that the school does is that I have the high school accounts. That is an entirely different account that is set up. So if you held that, and then you would take the money that you received from the donations with an exact replica of, we got $100 donation, and then your $100 donation goes into your lighthouse for the budget, or you can do it as a big sum, towards the end of the year or anything like that, that way you can actually show the tally of how much money that you've raised through it. But then still using the town's tax exempt code, knowing that that money is going into it is one of the things that the school does. But that's, I don't know, you might run that by Sally. And so, because now you guys are the bigger entity of me, not just like me. And so, but if you are gonna have the Friends of the
Just hear what
Lighthouse
she
to help with
says.
it.
There's no friends.
We have no.
You're getting friends.
I appreciate you taking it to Sally. That was resolved. Thank you.
Any other questions? We'll move on. Hearing none. Thank you guys both for coming and sticking around. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. We're not going yet. I want to hear the ferry update.
Oh, right, we did skip a whole.
So close.
No, you were out of
Sorry.
You're out of order.
Not much entertainment.
Go back into order.
Back,
I'm making a motion, we go back into order.
moved by Phil, second by Shay, I think, or maybe the other way around. All in favor?
Right.
All right, we're back in order. Ferry service update. There was an advisory board meeting today. I was unable to attend, but John King was there. And I hope we'll provide an update perhaps at the next meeting. We did have a finance subcommittee meeting. I think it was on Tuesday. One of the issues that came up was a lack of personnel, employees for the ferry service, and they were unable to, for a time period, staff all of the boats for North Haven. And the explanation, I believe, was that they couldn't get anybody to apply because they were not paying anybody enough. And the projection was they might have to increase pay by 30% for, I think these are AVs, who we're talking about in that instance, which is a relatively large increase. And with personnel being a very large part of the budget already, it's a concern that I think has implications for ticket pricing across the ferry system, for sure. And we are currently, the Island Institute is currently undertaking a full review of the ferry service. And so I think I would hope that the ferry service would not be doing anything with regard to rates until that's done, which may come up with alternative structures for the ferry service and ideas in many different areas that would have the potential to change the overall cost of the ferry service, or revenue for that matter. So that was one of the primary discussion points at the finance subcommittee meeting. And beyond that, I don't have an update from the meeting today, and I hope to get that from John King before the next meeting. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mark Higgins visited last week, and I haven't seen a report of that meeting.
Mark came with Dean Bernhardt, and there were a few things on the agenda. There was a discussion about the design of the new ferry for Osborne. There's a discussion about the naming of the vessel. And so I should add into the design conversation was a discussion about needs for infrastructure both on and off the island. Specifically because the proposed boat is proposed to be electric at this point. And so there's a lot of moving parts that they're working on right now, including, landside infrastructure on Oswell and looking at what that does to the capacity of the boat and duration, of all those things. There's a lot of moving parts there. The naming of the vessel,
New ticket system.
new ticketing system,
April
rolling out next month. There's a discussion about how to collaborate with the ferry service with regard to climate change, sea level rise, particularly at Window Point. I've seen some emails go by with Shay and with the ferry service about how to coordinate effectively and work with the ferry service on those issues. And so I think it was a very productive meeting. It was nice to have folks from the ferry service show up and have a conversation. It was not an antagonistic, it was amicable, I'll say, which is good, because I think that's sort of the relationship we need to have with the ferry service going forward.
Was it recorded?
I think it was, Tina?
I think it was, yes.
Can you send me a link to it if you find it? Thank
We
you.
didn't take notes.
Well,
mean,
I don't know about a link because it's not on the website, but I can put it on a stick and you can.
Okay, thank you.
They're big files. I can't email them.
Oh, that's fine, thank you.
Anybody else?
I've
wanna-
tried. Too big.
Anybody else have any thoughts about the meeting with Mark that was last week?
He did mention the cost of fuel also going up significantly.
They are locked in for what length of time? I mean, they do,
But I think he said locked in with an adjustment if prices went above a certain point.
yeah.
Was there a discussion of changing the ferry schedule from winter to summer?
Yes, there was a discussion about changing the ferry schedule, but that discussion was not as a concrete recommendation about what the ferry service ought to do with the schedule. It was more of a conversation about the ferry service needs to take better, need to keep better records of ridership of left behind and use a data-driven approach to decide when they ought to be running the ferries, as opposed to an anecdotal, I got left behind, the ferry goes to the other one. Which, we've all been, there. It's not very fun, but it's not necessarily the best way to make a policy decision about the schedule for the ferry, so.
Thank you.
Before we end, can I ask Dave a question? This is nothing to do with the ferry. But I just saw a note that I had, you mentioned the Safe Roads Committee was gonna meet last night. Did you discuss that bicycle tour restriction or ordinance?
Yes.
What'd you say?
We decided to reach out to the tour operators as a committee instead of going through Bicycle Coalition of Maine, and to have more input, a partnership, more of an understanding. The ordinance is still on the board under consideration.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns about the ferry service update before we move on to sea level rise update? Okay,
All right, I did hear from Gabe McPhail earlier this week that her grant request was successful to the state, so I'm gonna be meeting with her the next couple of weeks to start to get that going. Her goal basically is to get us enrolled in the state program so that in September, we're eligible for a $50,000 grant request, and we'll have identified a project through her support. Yeah, there's forward movement in the Grindle Point discussions with the state. It was nice to see them follow up, and we're working on getting a meeting scheduled to start to understand kind of how we can collaborate on the planning process. Those are the two things. Our next meeting is next Thursday, I think.
All sounds very good.
Oh, you meet before.
That's gonna be a fun day.
Any questions?
Oh, I guess we don't have a select board meeting, so that's okay. It's not
Yeah.
3 meetings, it's just,
Budget.
that's possible.
Budget.
Right.
Any questions for Shay about sea level rise before we continue? Planning board
Thank you, guys.
meeting here. Thanks for
Thank you,
coming,
guys.
guys.
Bye.
Planning board meeting, March 28th. Town managers report.
I really don't have a report. I've been babysitting, so, but I have sent to you or passed to you the groundwater protection committee minutes. And you probably did receive those. I never can remember what I sent you and what I received late. These are both back in February. And a letter from John Kerr from the groundwater protection committee. Explaining about PFAS and what the groundwater is looking at and expecting to do. I don't know if this is the time, well, and I mentioned Bill about the crown tail. I was gonna bring that up now. I don't know if this is a time when Gabe, if you want to, or we can talk later about that ferry donation fund, you know, that money that's in there. If you want to wait and talk about that when it comes to, but people could think about it, the actual working on the warrant when we prepare the warrant. You talked about perhaps it should be moved to the sea level rise.
Right.
And to vote that in. What amount of money was there? I forget.
Like $20,000 maybe.
19,868. That was left over from the ferry.
Very
when we were
lawsuit.
Lawsuit.
Gotcha.
those Donations.
It seemed like that was an appropriate place to, since at this point, there's no ongoing litigation or adversarial relationship with the ferry. That, I mean, it just seemed like Brindle Point is the place to put that money. It's related to the ferry service. It's related to transportation to and from the island. I think that's what made sense to me. I think that would require a town vote to make that move.
I'm sure I can check with I can check with Sally. It's not like it was money that was raised, it was donated, so I can just verify that. see
If we
it could
can,
be
if we can
moved.
vote to move it, maybe we do that. If not, we can just tack it on to the town.
Yeah,
meeting.
but I wanted to get that in the minute, so I would forgive
I
it.
think, I mean, and we don't have to make any decision about that now. That was just the conversation that we had. It seemed to be a reasonable place to move that money, so it's not just sitting idle in a reserve account and not getting spent. Anything else? Correspondence? None. Old business? None. New business, the Lighthouse is done, discussing increasing planning board fees. Shay, you weren't at the last budget meeting, but one of the things that came up was the very small fees for the planning board that don't get close to covering the CEO and plumbing inspector and haven't changed for a very long time. It turns out that those fees are written into the town code. So in order to change that, have to make the ordinance change. And I think the way to address that is to, as we've done with broadband, reference, a schedule that can be approved by the select board outside the scope of this, so that in the future, when changes need to be made for the fee schedule, it's not an ordinance change that has to go before the entire town. It's something that gets voted on by the select board and then gets implemented. So.
And were you thinking like, you've all have this, I hope, but were you thinking of all of the fees or like that 10 cent per square foot or the 5 cent per
I
square
don't think
foot?
that, I don't think that's even part of the conversation yet. I think what we need to do is have an ordinance change that, we need to start the process for changing the ordinance to be not have the fees written right into the ordinance. They need to reference, as we did in other
Right.
Yeah.
reference, something that gets approved. I probably don't even want to commit ourselves to approving it annually. And I guess we could do an annual approval, but we could, from time to time, whenever the select board wants to change them, it's a select board vote.
Is it something you want to delegate to the planning board? It should probably come from them, then they would bring it back to you or.
Sure. But I think that's
Yeah.
the way to
To get
go.
it
And I
on
think
their
the fees are really low and have been low for a while. And I'm not advocating for any particular change to the fees, other than I think that they're really low. And I think that in order to change that, we need to change the ordinance on the front end so that we can actually deal with it. And it's just very cumbersome to change ordinances all the time. And then, so I think we ought to the extent that we need, anybody want to make a motion to that effect?
I have a question first.
Go ahead.
So
No, go, I'm sorry.
I will totally wait if I need to.
No.
Okay, if we kick this down to the planning board, to have the planning board then resend it up with a suggestion or whatever to change the ordinance. Is that what we're doing?
Or amend it to remove the fees.
Right. So, to the best of my knowledge and capability, not a single member of the planning board watched the last meeting. So if we kick this down to them without an explanation of why we want them to put this back in our hands and they say no, can we do it without them?
Sure, we can do it.
Okay.
We can do it. I mean,
I
That
know
was my
Bill,
clarification.
Bill is aware, because I did mention to him and Dave Dyer is aware, but he's
I mean, do we?
not a member.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it would be pretty easy to make a change with a short memo that says, we discussed this at a budget meeting, take a look, these are our recommendations, and then ask them to recommend a change in fee schedule based on other towns. That's what I think we should do.
But you want to get it out of the ordinance too. You want to get those fees out.
Because, you know, I mean,
Right, but I think that we can, I mean, we
Yeah.
know how to change that and just highlight the change and say, here's what we're recommending. Can you discuss? And
I mean, we could go through that. I mean, just removing these fees, maybe from the, and just have a public hearing, and then you might get it without updating the new fees. Just, you'd say in the ordinance, refer to land use fees schedule.
approved by the select board
Yeah.
from time to time.
Yeah. I mean, if we wanted to do that, well, it depends if you're not in a pucker to do this, I realize
I'm in a
that.
pucker to do it.
Okay,
Let's
Well-
get this done at this town meeting.
let's see if that could happen. I can talk with them and see if,
If the town, I mean, so I think Shay's right on that we ought to be looking to them for guidance about the fee schedule.
yeah, about the fee schedule, but not about removing it.
And I think that it makes a lot of sense to just push ahead and say, like, we're just gonna change the ordinance to not, I mean, really functionally, not much is changing. Although, I mean,
We're just not listing it.
we're just not listing the
Yeah.
fees so that they
Right.
can be changed easier, and perhaps you have people in the town who don't want that because they don't want subject to the will of select board, and
And
that's
that-
something they can vote on that's
Yeah.
fine.
But I think they have to have a public hearing. I don't know if you
Yeah,
have
it
to
has to-
have more than one. If there's any changes, then you change. Well, we're just removing.
I mean, does anybody have any burning desire to try to make a recommended change to this? Do we want to just throw it on Sally and tell her to make the change? I don't believe it's gonna take very much time for anybody to make a change to this. That is, I think we can probably mirror existing legislation in the town code from other areas where this is done and then forge ahead.
I'm good with that. I just,
So just to
Because the
recap,
planning board
does
would be
that
the
need
ones
to
that,
come from planning board?
yeah, they should be the ones holding the hearing. But I mean,
the hearing on what?
if, on the ordinance revision, I mean, you're amending, you're removing the fees.
So we're not removing the fees. The
Well-
fees are gonna be the same, right?
Well, I thought you wanted to increase them. I'm talking about just removing them from the ordinance.
So I believe that we're not gonna increase the fees at all, because what we're gonna do is change this so that we can increase the fees, right? So I would say in the interim, what's gonna happen is the ordinance is gonna exist and change so that the fees are a separate schedule that's not in the ordinance. At which point, those fees are going to be what we have here, right? We're not actually like changing them until that ordinance change happens, because otherwise we'd have to do it through a town vote.
Right, so you're basically removing the fees from the ordinance,
Yes,
but you're not changing them here right now.
we can't change them there until the ordinance changes.
Right.
So there has,
So, yeah, so I-
right.
But the ordinance needs to be changed at the town, or accepted at the
Yeah.
town.
That's right, the ordinance, and then I would say, I mean, it's not like no one's playing hide the ball with this, like, the reason that we're doing it is because the rates are going up. That's gonna be part of the conversation.
yeah, they're gonna ask that. why are you doing that?
Oh, yes, that's the reason, and if they don't want that, I mean, well, whatever, they can vote it down, that's fine. But that's, I mean, whatever, the fees are low, but that's also,
Yeah, I'll get some new wording for that.
I mean, to the extent that people wanna vote that down, I'm not interested in having a special vote to have people approve change in planning board fees by
Yeah, no.
the town, whatever, they're gonna stay what they are. That's what the will of the voters are, so that's fine too. And I just don't think we wanna go through that trouble to change them.
well, you are puckered.
It's time to go home. It's been a long day. Anyway, I should.
Either's appropriate.
Right.
Spend a lot of numbers,
Anyway,
and I'm easily confused. so.
anyway, so let's recap to make sure we're all on the same page. Right now, we're going to, we're gonna throw it to Sally to come up with a proposed ordinance change in line with this. The plan will be, she will, mimic whatever other language we have in the town code for this exact situation, which I know that IMB is one, and then at the time, we're gonna leave the rates as they are. The schedule of rates that is going to exist at the time the town votes on this is going to be the same, and then the understanding will be, when the conversation comes up, that shortly thereafter, the select board will, upon recommendation by the planning board, vote to increase those rates to something reasonable. And I think Shay was right on. They can look at other surrounding towns, or they can look at
Yeah.
lots of, whatever they see is reasonable, or they can look at meeting a projected revenue target to fund the CEO and the plumbing inspector. That's not totally unreasonable.
Yeah.
Whatever they want.
I
Then-
like it.
Then we'll. So
Won't be Puckford anymore.
I don't know about that, but we'll hope, not about that. Anyway,
Do you need a motion?
Owl, you have it?
yeah, does anybody
So
want- moved by Melissa,
Are we done? Oh, no, you haven't gone to the
Second.
warrant.
second by Shay. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Great. No other business.
I move we approve warrant number 19.
Second by me.
I'm happy to.
All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Great.
Sorry, it threw me. You talk, she talks, I talk. We went out of order.
We went out of order. The chair rarely makes a motion or seconds a motion, but it seemed appropriate.
I like it. It's great.
There are no appointments today. The warrant is approved. Chair comments. I expect that I will be making a recommendation at the next meeting to increase the pay of the select board members in a somewhat substantial way.
You
What
look
that
just like
is,
your father
I don't
talking,
know.
just,
I don't know what it is, what it'll be,
you think hard.
but as it stands today, that's how I feel. about it. So take it or leave it. You can expect it. It may or may not happen, but that's my comments. Vice chair comments. Shay,
I've got nothing.
Phil. Melissa,
Happy
you-
St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day. Melissa, you get the last word.
Basketball sports banquet, March
What's
24th.
this?
That's the salary.
Payroll. Phil
At
gets
the-
that money.
5:30 at the gym. It'll be fun. Is this track and field starting?
Oh, that's the 24th, no,
Sports
whatever.
sports banquet's the 24th of this month. May 5th starts track and field. Go Eagles.
Is this where Melissa might mention changing the select board meeting nights? Is
No.
that something you're gonna do or
Oh, yeah.
discuss
Well,
that
we
at a
talked
meeting?
about this
On the
briefly,
next
so let's,
agenda?
I think at the next agenda, let's put it on the agenda for the next meeting. I think we've had informal discussions, and likely do not want to have our meetings at the same time as the school board meeting, so that folks who are interested in attending both are not conflicted out of one or the other, someone like Maggie or a parent who's interested in town,
Going back to Wednesdays.
perhaps. Motion to adjourn.
So-
Aye.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that everything? Sorry, I got out of hand at the end. I lost control of the meeting. But I was-
There was a really rowdy.
There was someone rowdy
Just
in
got a
the
little
room.
bit of motion.